Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This is part 2 of working through the Building Magic machine, not on TryHackMe, not on Hack the Box, but on Hack Smarter. If you haven't heard, I am slowly building my own platform focused on affordability and very realistic labs. So if you haven't already, make sure you visit hacksmarter.org, our newly redesigned website, because Hack Smarter really is the best InfoSec community. If you disagree with me, it just means that you are wrong. But hey, if you want to follow along with what I'm doing, here in subscriptions, you can get a hands-on lab subscription right now for only $7.99 a month. We'll unlock all of the current and future hands-on labs, but this is part 2 of working through Building Magic. So if you feel a little bit lost, make sure you watch part 1 first. But let's go ahead and dive right in where we left off in part 1. And oh, you also notice that there's going to be chat above me. I think, yeah, you can see them right there. I make all of these videos while I'm live streaming, and I live stream all the time. So if you haven't been part of one of my live streams, you're missing out. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, hit the little bell notification thingy so that you're notified the next time I go live. But let's pick up right where we left off in part 1. And in part 1, a quick recap is we had starting hashes that we began with, which is very realistic. I talked about that in part 1, and we were able to find valid credentials for a user called R. Whittleton, and his password is Little Ron Ron, actually the same password I use for my bank account. So that's pretty crazy. And with that, we were able to read shares. But when we look at our shares, there's nothing super interesting we have. We see a file share there, but we can't read or write to it. We have IPC, which is kind of default, but nothing else stands out to us when it comes to shares. And the goal in a machine like this that's focused on Active Directory is we want to begin mapping out Active Directory attack paths. Well, there's an incredible tool, and we ended part 1 talking about that, but this is a tool called BloodHound. It uses graph theory to map out potential attack paths in Active Directory. It's something I use on every single AD engagement in the real world, and something you should get familiar with. But the first step of using BloodHound is getting what is called the loot. We have to enumerate the domain controller, and we want to pull down all the users, all the computer objects, all the trust relationships, and all those things down so we can load them into BloodHound. There's a few different ways that we can download this loot. I've noticed that one of them usually doesn't work and you have to pivot to another one, but we'll go ahead and try this together. I'm here in my BuildingMagic terminal, and you can actually get BloodHound loot with Netexec if it works. And I'll show you how to do this. I don't actually know if I remember the syntax, but I believe it's Netexec LDAP buildingmagic.local. We'll use our user of R. Whittleton, if I'm spelling that correct, our password of Little Ron Ron, and then I think it's BloodHound. I always forget, it's like BloodHound all or something. We got to look at the wiki because I forget the syntax. Netexec wiki, which if you haven't checked out the Netexec wiki, it's an amazing resource just to read through. I want to do a mini course on like using Netexec and go through some of the main modules here. But the goal isn't to remember the syntax when you're learning ethical hacking. It's just remembering, hey, I know that I can do this and I know how to figure out the syntax, because you learn so many things. I personally cannot remember all the syntax. So I was close. -- bloodhound -- collection all. Now we cross our fingers. And you can see it did not work because we had an issue with the DNS server. Would that be an odd IP? Why is it trying to go through? Answer the DNS operation timed out. Odd. So what we can do is if we go over to our BloodHound ingester, we can do some command line options for DNS so we can specify the domain controller, so we can specify the DNS server. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. We're going to run the same command, but we will do DNS server, and we'll grab the IP of our machine right here. I'm just going to click it to copy it, and let's drop the DNS server right there. If this doesn't work, there's alternative ways of getting BloodHound loot, and I can usually get at least one of them to work. if I go like this, nmap ping 53. So it's open, but it seems to be having an issue with resolving the DNS. I'm going to try a few other things real quick. So we probably don't need to do DNS timeout. What we could try, and I don't think this is going to make a difference. I'm going to change this to dc01.buildingmagic.local because I think that is the actual name of the machine. Because a big part of ethical hacking is doing this kind of troubleshooting. Let's try this. Hit enter on our keyboard and see if this makes a difference. We at least resolved some collection methods, so it's not just frozen like it was before, and it is done. It looks like that's all we needed to do, and we were able to grab the loot. Before we celebrate too early, though, let's make sure there's actually some stuff in there. So I'm going to copy this full file path, and I'm just going to CP, copy it to my current directory. I'm going to make a directory called loot. I'm going to move it into that loot directory, and if I unzip it, okay, we do have some files in there. We did successfully grab the loot. So I'm going to copy this so we remember the syntax and add it to our notes. And I'll just do an H3 and I'll say getting BloodHound loot. And that all looks good to me. So guys, a big thing, I mention this all the time, but every time you're solving a machine, make sure you take good notes. You will need your notes. You will run into an issue on the OSCP or the PMPT or the PT1 and think, hey, I saw this before. How did I resolve it? Your notes are your second brain. They will come in handy. It's how I passed the OSCP in 8 hours on my first attempt, is because I had good notes. So make sure you take notes when you solve machines like this, and even better yet, share them. The cool thing about Hack Smarter is there's no restrictions on our machines. You can do live streams, write-ups as soon as the machine releases. Share what you are learning. Anyways, now that we have our BloodHound loot, we want to launch BloodHound. There's actually a BloodHound CLI. I think I might have it. Maybe not. Let's go ahead and download it. That's even better practice because you can see it. But there is a BloodHound Community Edition. And we can go to our Community Edition Quick Start right here. And if we scroll through, there is the CLI. Which I'm pretty sure that's all this is downloading the CLI. Yep. So let's go ahead and download the CLI. And you can see it's a tar file, so we'll do tar xf to unzip it. ls, we can go ahead and remove the tar file now. And now, if we run BloodHound CLI-H, you can see we have a few different commands. So all this is, it's sort of a wrapper around Docker to spin up everything that we need to run BloodHound. And to install BloodHound, you can say, hey, the install flag will build containers to perform first-time setup of BloodHound. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. Okay, we can do sudo systemctl start docker. And now we'll try it. Okay, that's interesting. There we go. If at first it doesn't succeed, just run it with sudo. I bet my user is not in the sudo group. Looking at chat. Is it anything besides debugging and troubleshooting? No, that is essentially ethical hacking in a nutshell. Hey, see, we're just getting started for tonight. Thank you for joining. How to use notes for a pen test. To do notes for a pen test, well, you can always refer back to them. Like when you're working on a pen test, you'll often see patterns, and you can remember, hey, I remember when I did a pen test like this and I saw it. You can control F through your notes. Although it's best practice not to use something like Notion for your notes for a pen test, because Notion is of course stored in the cloud. I would recommend for actual pen testing, maybe use Obsidian, because you can host Obsidian locally. You don't have to worry about that weird like data issue. But hey, just like that, we have BloodHound installed, which I did not add that to my notes. So I'm going to say launching BloodHound. download the BloodHound CLI file from, do I still have it open? From here. All right. And then once it does that, we of course have our initial password being set. I'll grab this information just so we have it for our notes. There we go. And now let's go ahead and see if we can get logged into BloodHound. So I'm going to copy. Oh, I did the copy as if I was in a terminal. I did Control-Shift-C, which pulls up DevTools. Let me go over to this and we'll head out to BloodHound. You can see we're logged in. Now, initial login is just going to be admin, which is a little bit confusing because it does say email address, but it is just admin. And we'll grab the initial password as well. Paste in the password, say not now. And we have to update the password, of course, so we'll paste in the password it's set for us. And our new password, we're going to do hacksmarter123 exclamation mark. All of you should be using that password. It is not in rocku.tech, so that's how you know it's secure. And we'll reset password. And there we go. We have now booted up BloodHound. So now that we have BloodHound configured and opened up, our next step is to import the loot. Remember the data that we grabbed with Netexec, the computer objects and user information. So it says, hey, to explore your environment, start by uploading your data on the file ingest. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to go to upload files. We can click here to drag. We'll go to Tyler, Hack Smarter, BuildingMagic, loot, and we could just upload the .zip. I'll just grab each JSON real quick and hit upload. All right, all files have been uploaded for ingest. Now, this is a pretty small AD environment, so it shouldn't take that long. If you're doing like a massive internal pen test, it might take a little bit longer to ingest the data in a BloodHound, but if we just refresh this, it will likely, it's still on the ingesting step. But we can go ahead and add that to our notes. We'll say ingest the data into BloodHound, and let's make a new, we'll call it an H2 maybe, and we'll say BloodHound analysis, and we're going to do some Active Directory analysis. Knox says, that's my bank account, but I use an @ for my password. Good idea. That's how you know it's secure. If you use an @ instead of an A, there's no way a hacker could guess that. Good call, dude. All right, you can see it's complete. Now what we want to do is enumerate our current user and other users. So I'm going to go over to Explore. I like to think of BloodHound sort of like Google Maps for Active Directory hacking. That's what it always reminds me of. But on the left side, we can click Explore. And on Explore, we can search for nodes. Now, I believe our users are Whittleton, potentially. Yes. If I click into R. Whittleton, I'm first going to right-click him, and I'm going to mark him as owned. Right? We have pwned R. Whittleton. It gives him a nice skull. And can I move this? No, I'm going to move myself. There I go. I just went running across my screen like a freaking mouse so I don't cover this up. And I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see this. But what we're looking at now is we want to see, is there anything interesting about our user? Is he in any interesting groups? Does he have write access over other user accounts? And we can see that our user has no outbound object control, so not write access. And he's a member of users and domain users, which don't sound like any groups that are going to be super helpful to us. And so we'll add that to our notes. R. Whittleton is not, we'll say, does not write access over other AD objects and is not in any interesting groups. But that doesn't mean we are done here. Whenever you get initial access to an AD environment and you can load up BloodHound, you have a lot of fun stuff that you can do and enumerate, and it just makes your job significantly easier. And it's all through something called queries or ciphers over here. I think I can leave myself down in this corner for now. We'll close this out just to clear the screen. But if I click cipher, we can click this folder icon for ciphers. And I keep getting in the way, guys. Go back over here, Tyler. But you can see we have some pre-built searches. So if we wanted to say, for example, who are all the domain admins, we can click that and hit run. And zoom out. We have one domain admin. It looks like administrator at buildingmagic.local. We can say, hey, is there anyone with DC sync privileges if we compromise them? Domain admins, administrators, all that fun stuff. Dangerous privileges for domain user groups. I don't know if anything's going to come up with that. No. We can check out Kerberoastable members. All Kerberoastable users. And we actually see a Kerberoastable user right here. R. Haggard. Now, to do a Kerberoast attack, we are essentially, well, not essentially, we are interacting with the Kerberoast service. And what we can do is request a ticket that is signed with the victim's hash. And then we can pull down that ticket and the hash and then potentially crack that hash offline. So if a user is Kerberoastable and they're using a weak password, we might be able to pull down that ticket, encrypt it with the user's hash, and then essentially crack the hash with something like Hashcat and then get their password. I'm not sure if BloodHound actually walks you through that. It doesn't. Oh, and it looks like our Haggard has some outbound object control. So what can he actually do? Okay, he can change password of HPOTch. I got too many things going on here. Let's minimize that. And let's walk through a potential attack path. I like to do this anytime I'm going through an AD environment, especially an exam, because it's easy to get caught in a rabbit hole. So I'm going to do like a potential attack path. Step 1, we're going to do a Kerberoast. The, whatever that user was, R. Haggard. And then as R. Haggard, change the password of, is that HPOTch? Is that the name of that user? Yes, HPOTch. So change the password of HPOTch. And now let's look at what permissions HPOTch has as I run myself across the screen. So HPOTch does not have any outbound object control and is not a member of any interesting groups. So in order to enumerate HPOTch, we're going to have to reset their password and see what access do they have to other things that might be on the machine. But the machine is very clearly pointing in this direction. How am I doing on time? We're at 18 minutes. Cool. So let's go ahead and work on Kerberoasting the R. Haggard user. So we'll do an we'll do an H2, and I'm going to say compromising R. Haggard. And we actually have to do a nano, and I'll just call this user.text. R. Haggard, drop his information in there. I think that's required, but I might be wrong. You can actually do Kerberoasting, like many things, using Netexec, but also like many things in Netexec, I don't remember the syntax for it. But you can see it right here in their wiki underneath LDAP protocol. There's Kerberoasting. And kind of what I was talking about before, the goal of Kerberoasting is to harvest ticket granting service tickets for services that run on behalf of user accounts, not computer accounts. Thus, part of these tickets is encrypted with keys derived from user passwords. As a consequence, our credentials could be cracked offline. Exactly what I said. And so you can see the syntax here. We just specify, oh, we don't need the user. All right, beautiful. We just say Kerberoasting and then do an output, and it's going to save the hash to that. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. I'm actually do up on my keyboard. We can go back to our previous netexec command just so I don't have to retype in the user's password. All right, so this is the one we were using before. I'm just going to erase all of this, and instead we're going to do Kerberoasting, and we can just call output.text. And just like that, we were able to get that service ticket granting service ticket encrypted with R. Haggard's hash. And so I'll drop that in my notes. And now that we have his hash, we should be able to crack it offline if they have a weak password. And this is why strong password policies are so important, because even if an attacker gets a encrypted hash like this, or a hash encrypted with the user's password, if the user doesn't have a weak password, we'd be stopped in our tracks. We could not go any further, at least with this account, without getting the clear text password. So if we cat output.text, that should have the hash, and it does. So then let me pull myself back across the screen like a little freaking mouse. And we're going to do hashcat. Output.text, I think it will automatically detect the hash type. And we'll do user share wordless rocku.text. It's kind of the standard wordless when working through a CTF. And we'll hit enter. And you can see it did correctly identify that it is 13100 or Kerberos as the hash type. I think Hashcat added that somewhat recently, like within the past year, where it auto detects it. Before, you used to have to always specify -m and then the hash type, but it does a pretty decent job now of identifying the hash. I've noticed that things like MD5, it will trip up a little bit, but and it did not take long at all. We successfully cracked the hash. And I should also grab the syntax for our notes, showing us cracking that user's hash. Do that, and then his hash password is Rubius Hagrid. We will drop that in, and now what we want to do, that's a good call, Anita. I'll have to do that. Now we just want to verify, hey, do we actually have access as this user? And as usual, we can do that with Netexec. And I'm going to just put his credentials side by side. So we have that is his password and his user is rhaggard. Also, just want to remind all of you who are tuning in the live stream, this machine that we're working on is from my own platform. Go to hacksmarter.org. You can get hands-on, realistic hacking labs and courses that you can actually afford. There's my quick mid-video promotion. But let's go ahead and verify if these credentials are actually valid. We'll do Netexec. We can do SMB. Basically, this syntax right here, but we're going to change this to rhaggard. And our password is going to be Rubius Hagrid. -- shares. And we have confirmed that we do have access as rhaggard, and we have compromised our second user. Now, let's scroll back up to our attack path. So we did this successfully. We Kerberoasted the rhaggard user. Yeah, the whole box has Harry Potter references in it, which I love. Now we want to change the password of hpotch. So let's make another. Did I make this an h2? If you're wondering why I keep doing these headings, a cool thing about Notion is if you look on the right side here, it gives us a table of content. So I like to work with headers, so it's very easy when I'm going back into a machine to say, hey, here's what I've done up to this point, and it just helps with notes. So even on real pen tests, this is how I take my notes. But we did an h2 for that, so let's do another h2 down here. And we'll say compromising, I think it was hpotch. Was that the user that we're targeting? Changing the password of hpotch. Looking over at time, let's go ahead and map out this attack path together. If we go back into BloodHound, and we can search for our rhaggard user that we just compromised, let's click into him. And let's go ahead and mark him as owned. All right, he's marked as owned. And outbound object control, I realize I'm blocking this again, but if I click into outbound object control, we have this force change password over hpotch. If you click into force change password, it actually walks you through how to do this. If we click into Linux abuse, it says you can use Samba's net tool to change the user's password. Their credentials can be supplied in clear text or prompted interactively if emitted from the command line. The new password will be prompted if emitted from the command line. So let's go ahead and grab a screenshot of that. I like to use Flameshot for my screenshotting. You can use FlameShot on both Windows and Linux. I don't know why you would use Windows though, but let's do this. I'm going to grab a screenshot of this, and we will just put a red box around the attack path, jump back over to my notes, and we will paste it in. I'll make this a little bit smaller. Drop it to the left side. And here's my challenge for you. If you've been following along with this challenge, I have showed you the attack path and how you can compromise the HPOTCH user. But I want you to try it. So this is going to conclude part 2 of us working through the BuildingMagic machine. But hey, you learn by watching me. You learn a lot more by doing and struggling and troubleshooting. So your goal, should you choose to accept it to continue this engagement, is I want you to figure out how to reset the password of HPOTCH. Once HPOTCH's password is reset, I want you to begin enumerating with their permissions. What do they have access to? What might they be able to compromise? How may they help us get deeper into the Active Directory environment? But before I show you, I want you to try it. If you get stuck, that is okay. Join me in part 3, and I'll continue working through this machine right alongside of you. But hey, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.